Here's the story of how the hell did this happen? The epic rise of President Donald Trump. The legacy of the Trump family. It all started back in 1869 with the birth of this handsome fellow, Frederick Trump, the grandfather of Donald Trump. He was born in Kallstadt, Germany, and then emigrated to the United States at the age of 16. He first found work as a barber, and then several years later, he moved to the Seattle region and opened several restaurants and brothels in both Seattle and the mining town of Monte Cristo. He was a shrewd businessman and cashed in big time by opening brothels in the area of the Klondike during the gold rush. He saw the need for certain services for the newly 100,000 gold miners who lived in the Klondike during that boom time. Frederick Trump spotted the unique business opportunity and essentially mined the miners by giving them easy access to food, booze, and ladies. I guess you can say he was a visionary and a pimp for his time. He then returned to his native Germany and married Elizabeth Christ. Unable to regain German citizenship, he returned to New York with his fortune in hand, ended up funding the Trump's family's first residential real estate investments in the New York area. In 1905, Frederick and Elizabeth had their first son, Fred, born in the Bronx, New York. Then in 1907, after their second son, John, was born, they moved to Queens. Sometime in 1908, Frederick Trump bought real estate in Woodhaven, New York. Then suddenly, in 1918, Frederick Trump died, most likely from the flu pandemic. He was only 49 years old. At the time of his death, grandfather Trump's holdings included 2-story, 7-room home in Queens, 5 vacant lots, $4,000 in savings, $3,600 in stocks, and 14 mortgages. Altogether, his net worth was $33,000, or equivalent to $600,000 in today's money. His wife and son Fred continued his real estate projects under the Elizabeth Trump and Son name. Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump, went into business with his mother, Elizabeth Trump, and developed a company named E. Trump and Son in 1927. They began building single-family homes and apartments around New York City. Eventually, they would manage an estimated 27,000 apartments. Fred Trump went on to marry Mary Ann McLeod in 1936 and went on to have 5 kids: Mary Ann, Fred Jr., Elizabeth, Donald, and Robert. Trump was a strict parent, maintaining curfews and not allowing cursing, lipstick, and snacking. At the end of his day, Trump's dad would receive a daily report from Mary on the children's actions and behavior and decide disciplinary actions if needed. He took his children to building sites to collect empty bottles for cash. The boys had paper routes, and when weather conditions were poor, their father would let them make their deliveries in a limousine. Trump's early years in business. Donald Trump joined the Trump Management Company in 1968 and then became the president of the company in 1971. Then, Donald borrowed about $1.5 million from his father to enter into the real estate market. Fred concentrated his efforts in Bronx and Queens, while Donald focused his attention in Manhattan. This way, they would not get in each other's way. Donald then borrowed another $2 million in the late 70s to renovate the Grand Hyatt New York. Donald went on to secure another $30 million in credit from his dad and $30 million mortgage. Trump continued his endeavors into real estate with the opening of the Trump Tower in 1983 and opened up hotel casinos in Atlantic City in 1985. He briefly owned an airline and a professional football team in the short-lived United States Football League. In 1987, The Art of the Deal, Trump's memoir and business advice book, was published and became a bestseller. By 1989, Forbes estimated his net worth to be at $1.5 billion. In the 1990s, Trump experienced heavy losses, bankruptcies. Times were tough for him during that time. He then made a comeback with various business ventures from real estate to steaks to neckties and many others by licensing his name to a wide array of business ventures. In 2004, Trump started hosting the reality TV show The Apprentice, in which contestants contended for an exclusive job at one of his companies. The show introduced Trump's catchphrase, "You're fired."
You're fired. 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 Let's go.
Hello, Mr. Trump. It's an honor to meet you. I was wondering what you would say to President Obama.
You're fired.
And pulled huge ratings. The business kingpin eventually raked in $1 million per episode and became a household name. He hosted 14 combined seasons of The Apprentice and a spin-off show, The Celebrity Apprentice. So, where in all this is Trump's link to politics and his rise to power?
Talking about totally corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. Not do. No lie that they won't tell. To hold their prestige and power at your expense. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself.
This famous advertisement in 2016 can be traced back to the Tea Party movement and their rise to power after the Lehman Brothers collapse and global financial meltdown. Now, let's go back to 2011, where Trump began attacking President Obama. Was this the start to building his successful political career? Trump began to make waves and gain respect within the Republican Party by attacking the validity of President Obama's birth certificate, the birther movement, as it was called. But before Trump became president and launched his attacks on the deep state, he recognized the effectiveness of questioning Obama's presidency, and by latching onto Obama's place of birth, it enabled Trump to tap into the resentment that was bubbling up on the right among groups like the Tea Party. This questioning of Obama's birth certificate, which of course was completely false, began to wake up a deep resentment in far-right groups. The Tea Party's movement became more pronounced after the financial meltdown of 2008, as many on the far right opposed the government bailouts to save the economy. These two tangible events, the questioning of Obama's birth certificate and growing popularity of the Tea Party in the post-2008 financial meltdown, awoke many of the nation's far-right citizens. Before we leave the Obama topic, who can forget Obama's famous roast of the then reality TV Donald Trump? Was this the catalyst to what drove Trump's desire to be the U.S. president?
Donald Trump is here tonight. Now, I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac? Say what you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House. All kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience.
Immigration was, and still is, another key issue that polarizes Trump's supporters. Trump staked his campaign on a hardline immigration stance, complete with mass deportations, a ban on Muslim immigration, and the border wall. Who can forget the border wall that Mexico was going to pay for? Of course, immigrants had nothing to do with the financial crisis, but issue provided the atmosphere that gave comfort and allowed some Americans to voice their displeasure with immigrants. There's still a large population of Americans that distrust immigrants or people who don't fit the mold of the stereotypical white Christian American. Now let's look at the nicknames. Trump uses the nicknames, often quite insulting nicknames, to ruthless effort. Let's look at who he ran against. It wasn't Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, or Hillary Clinton.
Bush is a low-energy person.
Lion Ted Cruz. We know Lion Ted.
That Hillary, as I say, crooked Hillary.
These clever nicknames haven't stopped either. Candidates for the 2020 election are now known as Crazy Bernie, Snow Woman, Pocahontas, and Sleepy Joe. Trump added an additional objective to this one: Sleepy Creepy Joe.
Against Crazy Bernie, that could be Crazy Bernie. A choice between Sleepy Joe and Crazy Bernie. Man, boot edge. It may be Pocahontas, remember that. Have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas.
Oh, and wait, let's not forget Buttigieg's nickname, Alfred Newman, the gap-toothed kid on Mad magazine. These aren't just nicknames. These are powerful linguistic strategies. These names get into our heads and affect how we view these candidates. We see Hillary as being crooked, and we see Marco as being little. Cleverly, Trump sets the narrative for his political opponents with rather negative stereotypes that have tremendous staying power. With just one comment, Trump turned Buttigieg into a cartoon character. These are far more effective than just innocent nicknames. These names overpower the opposition, and the media, whether it's CNN or Fox News, love to show video clips of Trump using his nifty nicknames. Donald Trump and his love of Twitter. Twitter was started in 2006 and seemed an unlikely tool for someone who rarely used the internet, email, or computers. Trump first started to use Twitter for marketing purposes, as many celebrities do. He tweeted sparingly, maybe a few times per month. Well, that all changed in 2011, when Trump considered entering the 2012 presidential race and wanted to raise his political profile. Trump began attacking Obama and started the birthing movement mentioned earlier. In January 2012, Trump first tweeted, "Make America Great Again." His following gradually grew, but it wasn't until 2015 when he announced his candidacy that his following exploded. By early 2016, his tweets were generating some 10,000 likes and 5,000 retweets each. Twitter had for the first time become a primary outlet for the views of a major American politician. Trump, who has weaponized social media to destroy opponents and promote himself. It's a genius tactic that is sure to be used by politicians from now on. Trump is able to bypass the media and their political bias they may have, or certainly do have, towards him. Trump said this to perfectly highlight this notion.
You're challenging the media gatekeepers and the corporate censors to bring the facts straight to the American people, and that's what you're doing. You're going right to the people. Possibly we wouldn't be here right now. I asked somebody, what do you think I'd do without social media? Would I be here? Because I said, I think so. But they weren't so sure. I have to say that, you know that. I'm not sure I believe that, but I have to say it. Communicate directly with our citizens without having to go through the fake news filter. I call Twitter a typewriter. That's what I really call Twitter, because it goes on to Facebook automatically and it goes on to Instagram.
and it goes on to television. More so Fox than it does CNN. If it's something bad, they'll put it on. If I have a spelling deal, they will put it on.
Donald Trump's brash and colourful style propelled him from the top of the business world to the pinnacle of success, the President of the United States. Love him or hate him, he is a fascinating character who can stir up emotions and get the best or worst of people all over the world. Only time will tell, but it appears he is on his way to another 4 years as the US President.